right, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of LandO's Lock-Ins. That's right, folks. It's time to make the pick'em predictions heading into our very first major of the season here in Vanguard. I mean, what? The Major 1 qualifiers were wild, some amazing results, some very, very interesting stories now coming in to the Optic Texas Major, which is happening this weekend, starting on Thursday, going all the way to Sunday, our first major of the season. We're going to be back in Texas, in Arlington, Texas, to be specific, at the Esports Stadium. It's going to be a blast. I hope to see you guys there. If not, I hope to see you online on the broadcast. It is going to be a phenomenal, phenomenal time. Like I said, a lot of crazy games, a lot of crazy results, and I am looking forward to making the best bracket possible because I've gone through a lot of the scenarios, I've gone through the matchups, and I'm pretty happy with my bracket. I'll be honest. I'm not going to say that it's going to be perfect because we've been this close to having a perfect bracket, but I'm happy with the way that things shape up. I don't know. I'll just go and put it that way. We'll leave it to you at the end of the video to find out if you agree with my boldness of my prediction. But at the same time, just want to say this really quick because this is going to be a long video. I just already know it's going to be long. If you guys have not done so already, would really appreciate it if you did drop a subscription on the channel. Leave this video a like, just because it is the very first major. I want to try to build this series up the best way that we can. The more followers that we get on this series, the more traction this series gets, the easier it is to make it more fun, right? To make it more fun with the thumbnails, with the interesting ideas that I have for different segments within the show, the higher quality it gets, and maybe even some giveaways. That is something that I honestly am trying to work on, is to reward those for great brackets, to maybe even give away stuff to people who are dedicated viewers of this series. That's something that I've been thinking about long term, something I thought about last year, and something that I'm thinking about heavily right now. So I'm just letting you know, would really appreciate a lot of love on this video. It's going to be a blast of an event, like we said, and feel free, guys, in the comments, on Twitter, let me know what your predictions are, matches you think that I got wrong, matches you think that I got right, and then overall would love to compare maybe some winners, right? Compare who we think is going to walk away with this title, because there are a decent amount of teams who have a good shot at taking it. But let's go and start things off. Let's go ahead and start off what is going to be nice and long video. Like, so we got what, like 18 matchups to decide. It's basically like 2 weeks of regular season play, all in one video. I will do my best to try to move past these as quick as possible. Not going to try to spend a monumental amount of time on each of these. We'll do our best to provide them with the information that they need, but also at the same time not oversaturating the same things over and over again, which is what I tend to do. So let's go ahead and move into our first matchup of the winners round one side. With these picks, I'm not going to be going in the exact order of the way that they will be on broadcast, but with the first four, all four of these matchups will be in a row. So these 4 games will be taking place on Thursday, and we're starting things off with the number 1 versus the number 8 seed. It's Atlanta FaZe versus the Boston Breach. As I said, not the first game at the actual event, but the first game that we're going to go ahead and jump on into. So as I said, number 1 versus number 8. I mean, what? For Boston, it's already a hard match. I mean, as we said, that series versus Optic specifically to close out their Major 1 qualifiers was a big deal. They needed to contest that one. They needed to at least win two maps, because if they won 2 maps, they'd have the 7th seed. If you had the 7th seed, then you're down here, I believe, facing off against the London Royal Ravens rather than facing off against the Atlanta FaZe. And much love to the Ravens, but I would rather play them then versus the team that happened to go 5-0, right? That is the scary part about facing off against Atlanta. And also another problem for Breach is not just who they're facing off against, but also because they're not just off of 1 loss, they're off of 2 losses. 1 versus Optic Texas in a 3-1, and 1 in a 3-2 versus the New York Subliners, right? The New York Subliners team with royalty in the lineup. I mean, nobody should be losing to that team, and Boston did. We predicted that, actually, but it was still a little surprising to see a team drop like that. And another note for Breach is that we talked at the start of the Major 1 qualifiers, one of the best teams in Search Destroy. I mean, started off the Stage 1 qualifiers 4-0 in Search Destroy. Since then, they're losing them. I think they've lost like the last 3 in a row. Hardpoint seems to be getting better, but at the start of the season, Hardpoint was not at all where they were seeing success. So to me, the biggest thing for Breach is just finding that consistency. And that is arguably the most difficult thing to do. That is what decides teams who are in the elite category, teams who actually have an opportunity to contend for titles, is to be consistent across the modes, specifically in hardpoints and search destroy. So while it seems like it could be a great situation for Breach, because it's like, hey, at one point they've been good at hardpoint, at one point they've been good in search and destroy, the issue is that it's not easy to level those things out. On the other side for Atlanta, I mean, nothing but positives, I feel like, for this group. I mean, it feels like they're only getting better despite all the talk, right? Much like what we had last season at the Kickoff Classic. They lost to the Mutineers in Game 5. This time they come out, they lose to the Surge in 4. And then so far, throughout the Major 1 qualifiers, they've been perfect. They have been perfect. They go 5-0. They're the best team in Search Destroy. They're a top 3 hardpoint team at worst, right? I mean, at the very least, they're top 3. They could be top 2. Also, they've got one player leading in every game mode category, right? They have a BZ leading in hard points. It is Celia with like a 2.6 search and destroy KD. He's number 1 at that. He's also number 1 in control with like a 1.3. It's unbelievable. And to me, the most interesting part of all of this for Atlanta is that it's not simp. It's not, right? It's not arguably the best player in the entirety of the game from last year. It is not the guy who we expect to be one of the greats, right? A guy who's already won 2 championships, a guy who's been in back-to-back champs grand finals. I mean, the young GOAT, without a doubt, is an accurate title for this guy. And the fact that he's not having a simp-like season, but yet Atlanta are still seeing success as being 5-0, it's unbelievably impressive. It really is. And I know Simp's having a great performance in Search and Destroy, but just in general, when you look at the KDs, which don't mean everything, it's not been a simp-like year, is essentially what I'm really trying to say. And so the fact that Celium has stepped up, the fact that Abizi has stepped up, the fact that Arshti's been consistent as well, it's super impressive from this Atlanta FaZe team. And a lot of people could look at that as a negative. I mean, I don't look at that as a negative at all. I mean, obviously, Simp's not playing simp-like, but you imagine that's got to be just around the corner. So with that in mind, 5-0 FaZe, a Breach team that's lost their last 2, not looking great in Search Destroy as of recent, but looking better in Hardpoint. A hard matchup for FaZe, or rather a hard matchup for Breach regardless. The fact that you're facing off against Atlanta, whenever the one map you took versus Atlanta at the Major 1 qualifiers, when you faced them, you won the Search Destroy. Now that's not looking nearly as good. And I think at best, that could be what happens again in this series. I don't like Breach's chances of walking away with hard points, of walking away with controls. Breach continue to lose Gavutu control. They've yet to play a Tuscan. If FaZe win the coin flip, I mean, what does that mean for Boston? They are in unfamiliar territory. They are in, undisclosed waters, places they have not been before. And that's, again, an issue with the Boston Breach team, is that, they've had a lot of time to work on things. They've had a lot of time to practice, and I hope that the Search and Destroy is back where it was. But it's just difficult because you can't be relying on respawn victories versus Atlanta. You may not even be able to rely on Search Destroy, even though you beat them on it previously. And so with that, I think at the very most, you give Breach a map. Maybe it's a 3-0. I think at best it's a 3-1, and the likelihood of Breach walking away with the game, I mean, it could be in a crazy game 1 hardpoint. It could be in the Search Destroy. I don't think it's going to be in the control. So I think it's either a wild game 1 hardpoint, which I don't think is going to be the case, but it'll most likely be the Search Destroy. And if that happens, it'll be a 3-1. If they don't win the Search Destroy, I see this being a 3-0. But for the case that Breach are going to have some time to work on their game, for the case that Boston could be figuring things out, maybe their Search Destroy gets back to where it was, maybe the hardpoint at least gets better overall because they have looked better in that game mode, I like their chances to take 1 or 2 in terms of game 1 or game 2, but that's really about it. I don't think they take both by any means, but we'll see. We'll move on to our next matchup, which is going to be Optic Texas versus the Seattle Surge. This is the only winners round 1 game, by the way, that we have yet to see this season, right? We've seen Atlanta versus Boston, we've seen London versus LAG, and we've seen LA Thieves versus Toronto Ultra. All 3 of these games actually have already happened at the Major 1 qualifiers. So that's something to keep in mind. That'll be pretty fun. So that makes this matchup that much more dicey, right? Because we've yet to see these 2 teams face off against each other. Optic Texas, 3-2 record. It did not look good for Optic Texas to start off the Major 1 qualifiers. The entire discussion that we had on this very show about Optic Texas was that, hey, a great opportunity for them to rebound in their first 3 games, right? They have got 3 teams that did not play well at the Kickoff Classic, 3 teams that they can improve against three teams where they can really sink their teeth into, really kind of get a flow going. And then they can worry about Toronto and worry about Boston once those games have been complete. Total opposite, right? They lose their very first two series versus Minnesota and versus London in Game 5, Round 11s. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that, right? You were losing two Game 5, Round 11s already in a dire situation, but they were able to win the last three in a row, which is wild. I mean, they beat Paris, they beat Toronto 3-0. Granted, a lot of that has to do, there's a lot of discussion around the F8 stabilizer, the fact that Shotzi was using it. I still think they win that series, but I do not think that it's a 3-0. I'll put it that way. I'll just leave it there. And then obviously they beat the Boston Breach in a 3-1. Only map they lose is that opening Gavutu Hardpoint, which was a must win for Boston, and they were able to take it. I mean, what? For Optic Texas, a very impressive last two series versus teams who don't go down easily. I mean, as we said, those were the two games that we all had circled on our calendar. If you were an Optic fan, at the very least, that you had to be prepared for. You had to be prepared for Boston. You obviously had to be ready for Ultra. And the fact that they go 6-1 in map count and those two series combined is very impressive. And also, the one thing that I wanted to mention as well was that they beat Boston, a team that's played only Gavutu Control and Vanguard, and they managed to come out and smoke them 3-0. Not only do they do that, right? Not only are they winning maps that they have yet to play versus teams who are very well experienced on those, but they also came through versus the Toronto Ultra and had what Chance said, which I totally agree with him on. They had one of the best Tuscan Search Destroys from a strategic standpoint that we have seen so far throughout the season. So if you're an Optic fan, you got to be excited, right? You've got to be excited about this team, the way that they're playing right now, the fact that it's not just hard points, but they're looking way better in Search Destroy. The record overall is solid. And then also their controls. They're the best, arguably the best Tuscan Tuscan control team. And the fact that for the first time that played Gavutu, they 3-0'd Boston, who was only played on that very map and mode combination. So a lot to be excited about for Optic after the fact that they lose two Game 5 Round 11s to kick off their Major 1 qualifiers. It's wild. It's one of the better stories that we have in the entirety of the CDL. And on the side for Seattle, I mean, the same record as Optic Texas, but almost the exact opposite in terms of recent results, right? Optic off of a nice few games in a row. Surge, not the case. Optic not winning Game 5 Round 11s, in fact, losing back-to-back. Surge winning back-to-back Game 5 Round 11. So it really is the opposite effect almost of where both of these teams sit, for the time. And the Surge, right, they come into the Major 1 qualifiers as one of the most hyped up teams. I mean, the fact they get to the finals, the fact they were able to do what they did, very, very impressive out of Seattle. And the fact that they have got a 3-2 record, the fact that they have lost the way that they have in their last few matchups is quite concerning. I mean, they have fallen dramatically in a lot of the power rankings. And the reason for that, you can say, well, they still have a 3-2 record. But if you look at their overall body of work, it's not as impressive as it seems, right? In the 3 wins that they have, 2 come in a Game 5 Round 11 in which Accuracy pulls a sneak defuse on Berlin Search and Destroy. And he clutches a 1v2 on Tuscan Search Destroy versus the Rocker. I mean, if those plays go the way that they are supposed to, Seattle ends up going 1-4, with their only victory being versus the New York Subliners, who arguably are the second worst team in the entire game. So, like I said, it's if you were to look at their entire body of work, you're a little nervous. Obviously, you have a win versus Ultra. That's great. You have a win versus Minnesota. That's great. But it's Game 5, Round 11 victories where Accuracy has gotten this team just out of harm's way. And then their last 2 games, right? They get stomped by Florida 3-0, which from the Mutineers' perspective is shocking because Florida is not familiar with 3-0ing teams. It's usually 3-1s. It's usually not versus super top caliber teams. The fact that Florida is doing this almost reorganizes Seattle in terms of where we have them in the power rankings. They come into a very hyped up match versus the Ravens, which is really going to test Seattle and to let us know where they sit, because it's like, hey, you know what? They have 2 Game 5 Round 11s that they've won. They're 3-1. They lost versus Florida. Big deal. Let's see how they play versus the Ravens, right? A team that they 3-0'd at the Kickoff Classic, and they get 3-1'd, and they get dominated in the final hard point of that series versus London. So I don't know, man. It's a scary time, I guess you could say, for Seattle overall, because you expected after the kickoff classic for this team to come through and just run. You expected them to come through and just run the Major 1 qualifiers. I expected them to have a 4-1 record. I think coming into the matches that they had, it looked like they were set up quite nicely for it. And whenever people do look at this matchup, I've seen a few people talk about this. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, Optic, obviously they got the 4th seed. Seattle's the 5th seed. This is not the team that you want to face off against. I think all things considered, right? You're not going to get Boston, right? If you're Optic Texas, I think you're actually cool with drawing the Seattle Surge. And the reason for that is this. Surge is looked at as one of the best search destroy teams in the game right now. For the most part, throughout the entirety of the season, when we talk about the Kickoff Classic, they've not really been reliant on hardpoint, right? They've not really been reliant on that game mode. They were good at control, right? They were without a doubt good at control at the Kickoff Classic. But so far throughout the Major 1 qualifiers, they've been 50-50 in both hardpoint and control. As an Optic Texas team who looks amazing at hardpoint and looks excellent in control and who arguably can compete in the search destroys, I think you're happy about this, right? Seattle also wins games by winning the game 1 hardpoints. And their last 2 matchups, they have lost the game 1 hardpoint and they've gone on to lose the series. So that's the way that it feels for Seattle, right? As a matter of this team can win search destroys, but controls 50-50, hardpoints 50-50. They need the game 1 hardpoints to set them up for the rest of the series because it doesn't seem as if they are complete enough, consistent enough to 3-0 teams. If you're Optic, I feel like you're excited about that, right? Because you are considered to be one of the best opening hardpoint teams in the game. That is the way that this Optic team works. They want to play you on small maps. They want to play you on Bocage. They want to play you on Tuscan, and they want to come out and they want to punch you in the mouth. Seems to be a recipe for success on how teams are already beating Seattle. So it's not like you're Optic and you're facing off against a dominant respawn team. No, you're not. You're facing off against a solid search destroy team who is 50-50 right now in both hardpoint and control. Again, who knows how land works? Who knows how Seattle translates? But given how the qualifiers have worked, I feel like you're cool with this if you're Optic. I mean, this is a great draw, I think, overall. And then to not only point out the fact that Optic is looking more consistent across all modes, but we get back to that point of the coin flip. Optic Texas, they want to play Tuscan control. We've seen Seattle look great on Gavutsu in the past. Optic just 3-0'd Boston Breach on Gavutsu control. So there's a lot, I think, that goes in favor of Optic, and I feel like I'm already giving away my prediction for this. But this series, to me, gets scary for whoever loses the game 1 hardpoint, because both teams have the ability to take the search and destroy. And I think overall, I would give Optic the advantage in the control, but I would not be shocked if this Surge team, who looked amazing at the Kickoff Classic in control, can win it again. Overall, in my eyes, Optic looks stronger right now. I believe Surge will look better on LAN. They've got time to work things out, but I just don't think that they're going to be good enough to get past this Texas lineup. I think Surge look better than some expect. I think some people expect this to be a 3-0, 3-1. I don't think it's going to be that way. I think Surge give it their best effort. I think they win the search destroy. And then I like their chances at least splitting the hard points. If not doing that, they can maybe win a control and go to a game 5. But I think in general, you like Optic's chances to walk away with this series. I think it's a good draw for them. But as I said, it's a big deal on who wins the opening hard point in this, because both teams have the ability to go up 2-0. Really, in all honesty, that is the way that this one very well could go, if obviously things shape up that way. But I'm going to go with Optic, and we'll move on to the last 2 games of winners round 1. We've got London versus the LA Gorillas, a rematch from a shocking series at the Major 1 qualifiers. We all remember, right? Gorillas somehow managed to beat the Ravens in a 3-1. That was the only loss that the Ravens did suffer at the Major 1 qualifiers, by the way, was to the LAG side. Like I said, London 4-1 record, really nothing short of impressive. These guys have looked excellent. I mean, I said this at the very start of the season, and I will stick with it. Gizmo and Afro are one of my favorite duos in the entirety of the league. Those 2 guys just seem to be so in sync. I think Gizmo said it in a recent interview. I forget. I saw the title somewhere, and I apologize for not crediting it. But I think Gizmo had made known that he thinks that his team's chemistry is some of the best in the league. And it looks like that. It really does. It looks like that right now. They've also looked excellent in hardpoint. They have a 7-2 record right now in that game mode that is tied for number 2 in the CDL, along with the Atlanta FaZe, just behind the LA Thieves. And I guess I'm looking at that was a record for the LA Gorillas. I apologize. I was thinking about London, but I got that mixed up. LAG look like some of the best one of the best hardpoint teams in the game. They are tied for number 2 in the CDL. But kind of getting back to this matchup overall, I don't know. I mean, the issue for LAG in this series, well, let's go ahead and jump into it. I know I just talked about LAG. I kind of whiffed that a little bit, but it's fine. We'll move past it. The issue for LAG is that, again, hardpoint is great. Search, destroy, and control is not. As I said, tied for number 2 in the CDL in hardpoint. The LA Gorillas right now are one-dimensional. They're great at hardpoint. Search and destroy, they're tied for the worst record in the league. Control, they're tied for the worst record in the league. There you have it. Actually, no, they're not even tied for the worst record in search and destroy. They do have the worst record in search and destroy. I mean, that's not great. You don't want to be a team that is reliant upon one game mode. I'm looking right now. They are 2-5 in search and destroy. They have a 28% win rate in search and destroy. That is the lowest, and they are tied at the very bottom of teams who also have 1-4 records. That's Boston and Minnesota, who also have 1-4 records in control. So again, one of the better teams in hardpoint. Search, destroy, they're the worst. Control, they're tied for the worst. And the issue with facing off against this Ravens team is that they seem to be more consistent across all the modes. I mean, London, one of the best control teams we have in the game. Hardpoint above average. I think search, destroy slightly above average, if not right in the middle. I think they have like a 3-3 record right now in search, destroy. So this is a team who is the definition of consistent. And the last time that LAG did beat the Ravens, it was through both the hard points. It was through winning both of those, which was a big deal for them. I think they also won the search destroy, I want to say. Yeah, it was a control that London won, but it was the opening hard point, the search destroy, and then the game 4 hard point that the Gorillas were able to take. And I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think that's going to happen versus this London team. And I'll be honest, I don't think that London even give them a chance at seeing a second hard point. I think the Ravens come out, they win the opener. I like their chances in the search and destroy versus LAG, who just does not look great in that mode for the time. I think that's a mode that they should be good at, but just one that they're not going to be on par with. And then when it comes down to the control, again, London are one of the best control teams in the game. The problem when facing off against the Ravens is that they oftentimes can be up 2-1 in a series before you even realize it. They can be up 2-0 or 2-1 in a series, and if they have got you right there, you're in an issue, right? You are in a problem spot if you are the Gorillas, if you do not win the opening hard point. I don't think that they will, and I think that will be their downfall in this series. Will be because of that. 3-0 for London, and we'll move on to our last matchup of winners round 1. It is the LA Thieves versus Toronto Ultra. Feels like a classic matchup between both of these teams. This is their third encounter with one another so far in Vanguard. Ultra beat them in Game 5 at the Kickoff Classic. LAT, and I believe it was each other's last series of the qualifiers, or one of their last matchups of the qualifiers. Thieves beat the Ultra 3-1. I mean, overall for Thieves, 4-1 record. Their only losses versus the Atlanta FaZe. To me, I think that they did have some good timing with that record. I think Kenny has said that he doesn't agree with that, but I think that they had some easier matchups, and the timing I think did work out for them pretty well in a few of their games. Specifically because they got to face off against New York, who seems to be weak right now, who's obviously going through issues. They have a close series versus Florida, which again, you just don't know what Mutineers you're going to get on the day. They beat a Paris team pretty handily, who's obviously one of the worst teams in the game. And then they get to take on the Ultra after the Optic loss, which is never going to be an easy game, especially the fact that Toronto, I think Toronto after that loss versus Optic was fired up. We saw that at the opening bocage. The fact that the Thieves were able to rebound off one of the worst losses that they have suffered throughout the entirety of the year and win 3 games straight was very impressive. But the fact that they get to face off against the 11th and the 12th worst team, the fact that they get to face Toronto, which I don't think is that big of a deal. I mean, I would want to play Ultra right now in comparison to at the beginning of the year. I wouldn't have want to play Ultra at my first game. I'd rather play them toward the end, when they are in a few of these closer matchups, when you can know their map pool a little bit better. And then obviously you face off against FaZe pretty early on. it's never going to be an easy matchup versus FaZe. So I can see the way that they would label it to where they feel like they didn't have a great schedule. But I think when you're playing 11 and 12, that is definitely not a Minnesota type schedule. I'll just say it that way. But they have a phenomenal performance overall. And I think if you're 100 Thieves, you've got to be stoked with this. I mean, you've got to be very, very happy with the way that LAT is playing right now. It seems like the investment that they made in getting Octane, getting Envoy onto the team is working out swimmingly, right? Bringing Draza back is working out fantastic. And then from a game mode specific, side of things, Hardpoint is great. Search Destroy, not amazing. And Control is even. They've also been playing, in California, which is something to think about. So you expect this team to get better on land now that they're going to be, the pings are going to be exactly even, not 20 to 30 off of where they would normally be. So very exciting if you are a Thieves fan. And one of the scariest teams in my eyes coming into this tournament is going to be this Thieves roster. And that is a scary sign if you are the Toronto Ultra, who were your Kickoff Classic champions, but have had a rough go of it so far at the Major 1 qualifiers. I've went through and I've looked at all 9 of their map victories. 7 of them have been down to the wire, and 2 of them were dominant, but didn't change the tide of the series. So in 7 of their 9 map wins, they've seen round 10s or round 11 in Search Destroys. They've had countless round 5 controls, and they've had 2 very close hard points in which they won by like 2 and 5 points, or rather one. I think it was a 1-point victory and like a 4-point victory. And then, as I said, the 2 dominant map wins that they did have didn't change the result of the series. They beat Seattle in a very, very good game for Berlin. They lost the game 5. They beat LA Thieves handily in an opening Bocage hardpoint. They went on to lose the next 3 maps. It has not been a great situation for Toronto. And in the 2-3-0 wins that they have versus LAG, and who was the other team? They had a great 3-0 wins. I want to say maybe it was versus Florida. I don't remember who it was, but they had 2 really, it was like, a nice 6-0 week for Toronto. All 6 of those maps were close. That was the problem, was that when Toronto is winning, or whenever it looks like they're dominating, they're really not. They're not. Those dominant victories aren't actually adding up into true results. I mean, obviously they get the points that they do from those 3-0 wins, but they're very back and forth. The thing with Ultra as well, everybody right now at the stage 1 qualifiers sits below a 1 KD. The team is middle of the pack in hardpoint and control based off of record, and they're also 2 and 4 in Search Destroy. I mean, last year this team was top of the order in Search Destroy, top of the order in control, and they were above average in hardpoint. It is not that way. It is not that way this season, at least at the Major 1 qualifiers for the Ultra. I mean, the big story last year, right, was the craftiness of the SMGs and overall just the dominance from the ARs. It's not really been that way. I mean, CleanX was a superstar at the Kickoff Classic. He's not looked nearly as good at the Stage 1 qualifiers. He is, been solid, but it's not been the level of what we saw CleanX be. I mean, everybody remembers that 10 spree that he had. I think it was like on a Tuscan hardpoint or a Tuscan control. I forget. But he has not seen those same results, or maybe seen those same high level of stats. And Insight and Cammy, they just don't really seem to be putting up the numbers that they did last season. And I think because of scrimmages as well, Ultra isn't getting their Berlin hard points, so they're being forced to play the really mixy maps, right? They're playing a lot of Tuscan, they're playing a lot of Bocage, which isn't really going to put the ARs always in a favorable position. They aren't often playing Gavutu because they don't have that designated third AR. And as I said, the ARs haven't looked incredible. So to me, there's been a lot of little factors for Toronto that have not really been working out for them. As we said, they're playing the mixy maps, which is never really going to be a guarantee. Teams know they're great at Berlin hardpoints. They're not seeing those very often. And they don't want to play Gavutu because, as we said, they don't have a designated natural third AR, and the other 2 AR players aren't having the same season that they did in Cold War. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting matchup. But when it comes down to the vetoes of this series, I think it's going to play very similar to what we've seen previously, at least in regards to the hard points. So when we talk about map vetoes for this series, right? Thieves, they don't want to play Berlin hardpoint because it's their auto veto. That just happens to be the one map, if you're a Toronto fan, that you'd love to see. You want to see a Berlin hardpoint because that is where this team absolutely thrives. They're most likely not going to have it. Ultra, more often than not, do not want to play Gavutsu hardpoint, and that happens to be the Thieves' best, or at least it appears to be the Thieves' best hardpoint. Kenny has said, don't play us on a Gavutsu hardpoint. He's like telling teams what to do. So we'll probably see the same hardpoints for the third straight time that these teams have faced off, which, as I said, is Tuscan and Bocage. And Thieves have played all kinds of different hardpoints. They've played their fair share of Tuscan and Bocage. And so the odds are really on, right? Ultra, can they take a hardpoint versus Thieves? Can Thieves take a Search Destroy versus Toronto? We've seen that play out multiple different ways. We've seen the Thieves win a Search Destroy versus Ultra. We've seen Toronto take hardpoints versus the Thieves previously. But I think that this one goes to it. I think it goes to a game 5. To me, I have this team regardless of a 3-1 or 3-2, and I go with Thieves. I do. I don't know how this one's going to play out. I have high expectations for Toronto. I've said that they could be a dark horse team when it comes down to this event, but I don't know. It just does not seem to be a great situation. And I think when it comes down to this matchup, the way that we saw the Major 1 qualifiers end for the Ultra as well, they just don't seem to have that bread and butter going. As we said, last year it was Search Destroy and it was the ARs. It's not been that, right? The Search Destroy is 2-4 record. The ARs not playing as good as they did last year. So it's not just like one thing is off for Ultra. It feels like their whole blueprint of really what they were last year isn't at all what we're seeing this season. And even at the Kickoff Classic, I mean, we saw them look great in a number of different modes, but specifically it was Kleenex. I mean, Kleenex was the all-star for the team, which we thought, hey, I mean, if Kleenex is playing the way that he can, and we know what Cammy and Insight did last year, we know the level that Bance can provide to a team, the chemistry this roster has, I mean, this team could be terrifying. Yet to be seen, and it's worrisome that all 4 players are below a 1. The fact that Search Destroy is not looking great. The fact that they're relying on respawns is weird, and it's slightly troublesome. I'll be honest. It is slightly troublesome from the Toronto side. I want to make sure you guys can see this. Okay, cool. You can. Cool. I want to make sure that you guys can see these losers round games. So we will start things off now jumping into our elimination round 1 matchups. We've got our winners decided from round 1. Let's go and see who's getting eliminated already off the start. We'll kick things off with the Boston Breach versus the Florida Mutineers. I mean, I'm going to go quick with these. I think we'll probably see a close quarter map and then a bigger map in the hard point. So I think we'll see like a Tuscan or a Bocage mixed with like a Berlin or a Gavutsu for this. So these teams are going to be tested in the hard points in terms of their consistency. Obviously, Boston's going to want to play the big maps. Florida's going to want to play the smaller maps, at least so far based off of it. You got some really, really good Search Destroy players in this, right? Boston has got a few players higher up in the KDs. I know Awakening started great in Search Destroy. Skies is up there. Dave is up there. I don't know. I mean, to me, the coin flip's going to be important because I think that if you're the Mutineers, you probably want a Tuscan. If you're the Breach, you've obviously played Gavutsu over and over again. Why not play Gavutsu again? Honestly, I'd like to see them play Tuscan, but there's a reason why they're not playing Tuscan despite not winning hardly any Gavutsus. But so far, at least from the results that we've seen from the Florida Mutineers, it is all about game 1 wins. Rarely does this organization, even going back to last year, go to game 5s. It's usually 3-1 or 3-0 wins, or it's 3-1 and 3-0 losses. I know they had that win versus Seattle, but to me, it just seems so typical of this Florida team to maybe not instantly come back with the fire. Knowing the way that the Mutineers could come out in this series, I would say I'm not super high on Florida walking away with this. The only thing, though, is that I have Boston off of a 3-1 to 3-0 loss versus Atlanta. I think that they're a little shook from that. I think at the same time, Boston is not a team that can put the Mutineers away early. I mean, I think out of a 3-1 win versus Paris, have we seen Boston win a convincing series in which the 3 games that they won were dominant? They're not going to a game 5. Boston has got to stretch out these victories. And that is an issue when you're facing off against this Florida team who can come out and really surprise you a little bit. So I don't know. I hate to do it because I love Boston. I want to see this team really improve. But I think it's going to be an unfortunate matchup for the Breach where you're going to face off against a Mutineers team who could really walk away with anything. But to me, the opening hard point is going to be very, very crucial for this series. And I think I like the Mutineers' chances of walking away with that hard point. I think you give Boston the edge in the search destroys potentially, but I mean, if that doesn't go their way, this series is over pretty quick. So I have Boston going out 0-2, not winning a series. They have the unfortunate draw versus Atlanta. Then they drop here versus the Mutineers. And that would mean that they have lost their last 4 series straight. And that could be some talks for changes. I have no idea. I'm just throwing that out there. Who knows what could happen, but losing 4 matches in a row is not good. Obviously, if you are Breach and coming into your very first major as an organization. I feel like this stuff has already happened. These are just predictions, for God's sake, but it's important stuff. Okay, we'll go and move on. Seattle versus Paris. Paris confirmed, right? Gravity is joining the Legion. I know, like, there's been some rumors that Jimbo from Challengers as well also could be joining this team. He tweeted out like a GIF talking about how he signed a contract. So I really don't know what's going on. The information that I have been told is that it appears that obviously Tom Gravity is joining this team, who is a main AR, been in Challengers for the longest of times. Happy for that guy. He will be the main AR, which means that you'd think Fellow would be the second AR. Told that's not happening. Fellow is now the second SMG along with John, and Temp is stepping from the second SMG to the third SMG, the second AR. So it'll be Tom Gravity, the main AR, Temp in the second AR, Fellow in the third AR/second sub, and John as the main sub. So a lot of moving pieces for Paris. A lot of people wanted to see them make a change, obviously, because they didn't win a series at the Major 1 qualifiers. And then obviously if you're Seattle, you're coming off of a 3-2 loss versus Optic Texas. I don't know. I do like the change that Paris makes. I do. I mean, I like the fact they're bringing in Tom Gravity. I like the fact that they are bringing in challenger players. I have no idea if Jimbo's coming into the team, so there is some thoughts on like, well, what do we expect from Paris? Do these changes really make a huge difference in this series? And I don't know. It's hard to know because we've yet to see scrimmages. We don't know how this team's going to play. I think Tom Gravity is a great leader. I think he could be very, very good for this team. But I just worry about that SMG line now. I mean, I really do. I don't love the fact of John and Fellow being together in the SMGs. I actually kind of liked Fellow being the main AR because I think he could be a great voice, a player who plays for spawns, very similar to like an Accuracy or a Zero for the respective lineups. The fact that he's now in a sub role along with John, I think if you're Seattle, I mean, that is the perfect call to be like, okay, Mac, okay, Pred, okay, Sib, let's run at these guys. Let's play them on Bocage. Let's play them on Tuscan. Let's get these guys uncomfortable, and let's get them out of sync when this team, could be a problem, or maybe could steal a map here or there. So with that, I'm going to give Seattle the edge. I think it's a 3-1. I think Paris maybe take a search destroy, even though Seattle are good at search destroy. Maybe Paris win a Gavutu control because that just seems to be a map that they love to walk away with. But even with the addition, there's a lot of things to that are somewhat unexpected. I think Seattle still take it. And obviously if that SMG, role is in fact true, I just think that Seattle, are going to walk away with that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll move on. LA Gorillas versus the Minnesota Rocker. We saw this series go to a Game 5 at the Major 1 qualifiers. Minnesota managed to take both the search destroys and a hard point. And this was the series that made LAG fans very, very nervous because Gorillas, in losing that series, then had a 2-3 record. They were not guaranteed to have a winner spot. So with that, it obviously, was a little terrifying at the time. They still got the winner spot, but I do have them, even though they did get the winner spot, losing to London in a 3-0. So you're not feeling great if you are LAG because you're off of a loss versus the Ravens. And now you're facing off against the Minnesota Rocker. As I said, a team that you lost in Game 5-2 at the Major 1 qualifiers. And I want to talk about Minnesota for a moment because Rocker deserves some respect, right? They finished off the Major 1 qualifiers with a 2-3 record. The issue that Rocker had was the schedule. I mean, to me, and it could be argued, to me, Minnesota had one of the most difficult schedules out of anybody at the Major 1 qualifiers. They faced off against Optic Texas, Seattle, London, Atlanta, and the Gorillas. I mean, those are 5 teams that are excellent. I mean, we can talk about Seattle, maybe not the same team they were at the Kickoff Classic. Gorillas, I mean, that's just an unpredictable team in general. But the fact you're facing off against Optic, London, and Atlanta, who could be the top, teams that are in the top 3, top 4 right now in the entirety of the game, it's rough. It really was. So the fact that they go 2-3 is actually pretty impressive. I mean, it's roughly where you'd expect them to be. I mean, if they go 3-2, 3-2 versus 2-3 is a huge difference for this Rocker team because every win meant so much. To me, it's the same story as when they faced off. The same story as what we talked about in the Gorillas versus the Ravens. LAG, one-dimensional. They have got to dramatically improve in search, destroy, and in control if they want to make a run at this tournament. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, LAG is a scrappy team. I mean, they beat the Ravens. They have some good results here and there. They can take teams the distance. But I like Minnesota's chances of stealing one of these respawns. I mean, as a Gorillas roster who can definitely take the opening hard point, you like Minnesota in the search destroy. Minnesota could be favored in the control, even though they haven't looked great at control. And then I like Rocker to either split the hard points or to at least take a control. I mean, the fact that LAG, if you were to tell me that LAG is going to win all three of the respawns, I don't think is going to happen. I really don't. I think that the Rocker are going to win at least one of those respawns. And if they do that, you like them in the search destroys. And I think that this series pretty much goes the exact same way as it did at the Major 1 qualifiers, where Minnesota, they win game 2, they win game 4, they win game 5. I think it's either that or Minnesota takes a control. It's going to be one of those. And we'll see if LAG, who have some unbelievable slayers in the control, ASIM specifically, is a menace in control. We'll see if he can do that this time. And maybe LAG don't have to win a series with winning a control, or rather with winning a search and destroy. Maybe they can just go 3 for 3 in respawns, call it a day, and move forward. I just don't see that happening. LAG, unfortunately, despite starting in winners, go 0-2 and are eliminated in the top 12. Move on. Toronto versus New York. Toronto, I have them off of a loss versus the LA Thieves in a game 5. New York, yet to win a hard point. They have yet to win multiple series. They won one series versus Boston. It just feels like the subliners are hanging on by a thread. It really does, right? There are constant pros, prior pros, and I'm sure they wouldn't be angry, obviously, with me saying it, but they've talked about how maybe Clay and Krim just aren't working out, right? Maybe that duo isn't meant to be with each other in Vanguard, right? I mean, there's been a lot of talk on maybe Royalty isn't the right fit. And when you do look at the one win they had versus Boston, right, where you're thinking, okay, where is, Landon, excite me about the subliners. Excite me about my team. I can't really do that despite the win that they had versus Boston, because in that game, they go to a game 5 round 10, and it required Hydra to have one of the best series that he has ever played. The rest of the team, right outside of Hydra, went negative 35 overall in slang. He went plus 20. He had a 1.21 KD. And on top of that, he had to drop 17 in the game 5 bocage just for New York to barely slip by Boston. New York wins both the search destroys. And like I said, it was off of Hydra. It was off of the French phenom going for a 1.2, dropping 17 in the game 5 in order for them to just narrowly squeak by the breach. It is a hard sell to say that you should be excited after the win that you had versus Boston. I don't know. I feel like this New York team, going off of the victory that they had versus the breach, New York moving forward just might have to be a search destroy team. They might have to be a one respawn type of roster where they look for a hard point, they look for a control, but they ultimately rely on the search destroys, which isn't a bad place to be. I mean, we've seen teams in recent history be able to do that, and at a very high level, right? That was a big thing for Rocker last year. It's a big thing for Toronto last year. There have been some great teams who are more often than not a one respawn type of roster. As we said, the issue for New York, they're not able to rely on hard points at all, right? They are not winning hard points. They're 0-9. They're relying on control victories. I think they're 3-2 in control. So that can be their respawn. But as we said, it is scary to be a team that relies on search, destroy, and control. Search destroys can go back and forth. Control, it's only one game out of the series. At least for hardpoint, you got two of them that you can rely on. 0-9 in hardpoint is terrifying if you're the subliners. Toronto's going to be off of a close game versus the Thieves. I think Ultra just come out and they win a 3-1 series. I do. it's hard to sell that New York can make this one competitive. I mean, I think a few of these maps will be close. I don't think this is going to be like Ultra just totally dominating New York, going plus 50 in slang. It could be that. I think it'll be slightly close, but I think the more maps that Ultra win early, if they go up 1-0, that hurts New York's confidence. If they go up 2-0, that dramatically hurts New York's confidence. I think with this team, having Royalty be brought into the lineup when, there's been a lot of pressure, a big spotlight on the vets, a big spotlight on this team getting rid of Neptune, and everyone's talking, well, maybe you should have got rid of Neptune so early. You talk about how you want to win. It instantly puts the pressure on the subliners to try to come out and walk away with dubs, and I just don't see that happening versus a Toronto team that I think is hungry to try to walk away with wins, a team that is almost desperate to walk away with victories, especially considering that they would be off of a loss versus the Thieves. So I think it will be a Toronto dub. I think it is going to be a subliner's loss, and who knows? I think that New York probably look at roster changes. I think they do look at changing up the team at least a little bit when it comes down to the next major, or rather the next major qualifiers. And who knows what would happen? I really have no idea what would happen at that point. So let's go and move back on up. This may not be the actual order to do it. I should probably go to elimination round 2, but I got to talk about some of these winners games. Let's go and jump to this one. Winners round 2, Atlanta FaZe versus Optic Texas. Are you kidding me? Oh boy, this is going to be a fun game. This is everything if you're an Optic fan, right? You managed to get past the Seattle Surge in a game 5. FaZe are off of a nice win versus Breach, but this is the test. This is the game that you have been waiting on. I know there was a lot of talk on how, and shout out to Roger, there's been talk about how maybe Roger might have accidentally messed up the team's chances in their first 2 series because of lag and all that stuff. All of those things aside, right? The fact that you've won what would be 4 series in a row coming into this match versus FaZe, who have yet to lose in actual play, an actual series. This is the game to watch. This is the game to focus on if you are an Optic fan. And I would not be shocked, right? If this goes to a wild game 5, I also wouldn't be shocked if Atlanta comes out and just runs the party. But I do think that as of this moment and coming into this series, that FaZe are still stronger right now. And while Optic have been great, I think that they will make a few mistakes in a higher pressure match and drop to the lower bracket. I do. But the question is, how close is it? Does Optic send them to 5? Do they go to 4? I don't know. I mean, again, if you are Optic, you're relying heavily on those game 1 hardpoints. The problem is FaZe, totally different beast. You can throw out those game 1 hardpoint records versus this FaZe team. Optic has looked better in Search Destroy. FaZe is the best Search Destroy team based off a win rate right now in the game. I think you could give Texas the advantage in control, but I don't know. Maybe FaZe wins the coin flip and they want to play him on Gavutu. Probably not, but you never know what could happen. I think this Atlanta FaZe team is absolutely using this 2 week or this extra week of practice. The same thing could be said for Optic. They'll have the crowd on their side, but I just don't see the Atlanta FaZe stepping down. I think that this could go to game 5, but I'm going to say that Atlanta takes it 3-1. I think Texas put up a good show, but I think ultimately it comes down to a few little mistakes. You're still happy with the way that Optic played, but you just know that you ran into the best team in the game, and that's just the way that it goes sometimes. As much as I would love to send the hometown favorites, the team that's running the event through to the next matchup at the winners finals, I just don't see it happening as of this moment. We'll go move on. Our other winners round 2 game, it is the London Royal Ravens versus the LA Thieves. This is going to be a really fun matchup as well. Both teams a 4-1 record. I think you give the Thieves instantly the edge in hardpoint, but not by a ton. You obviously give the London Royal Ravens the edge in control, but not by a ton. And then maybe you give London the edge in Search Destroy, but also not by a wide margin at all. This is going to be a huge proving game, honestly, to find out who actually is top tier. Like, I think it's fair to say that the 4 teams that we have in the winner side are arguably what a lot of people expect to be the top 4 teams as of this moment. And that could be somewhat premature. It probably is. I know a lot of people could say that maybe Seattle are still there. Toronto are still there. I don't know if you have maybe a team in the lower side that could show otherwise. But these 4 teams, to me, are I don't know. Obviously, I have them here, but I think in most brackets, people will have them here as well. We know that Optic is looking much better, but this ultimately right, is going to be a massive proving game to find out who legitimately is above the other one in the power rankings. Most people are going to have the Thieves a little bit higher maybe than the Ravens. So I think there is a little bit, maybe more pressure, maybe a lot more to play for. If you are London, you got some more unknown players on this team. Obviously you have 2 rookies playing, so there is that's going to be coming into it as well. But this to me is to prove who is top tier, who is one of the top dogs in the game. And I look at this as whoever wins the Search Destroy has a massive edge considering the talent that both of these rosters have got. Like, I like the Ravens more in Search Destroy, and I think they can go 50-50 in the hard points because they are a terrifying team at Berlin. And if you are the Thieves, you want to play Berlin, right? That is something that I think is a very interesting note for this series. To me, the one thing that I am circling, if I've got this match or if I'm watching this match, is to see if Berlin hardpoint goes through. Reason being, teams don't want to play London on Berlin hardpoint because they're nasty at it. Specifically, I know I just made a pun, specifically Afro. Afro is unbelievable at Berlin hardpoint for whatever reason. The Thieves love Berlin hardpoint. For whatever reason, Kenny is unbelievable on Berlin hardpoint. They have dominated that and Gavutu in scrimmages at the beginning of the game and so far throughout Vanguard actual season, including the Kickoff Classic. So that is the one thing, right? Teams don't want to play the Thieves on it. Teams don't want to play London on it. Thieves will probably try to get that one through, and the Ravens will say, okay, perfect. We'd love to play on Berlin hardpoint. So depending on where that one sits in this is going to be interesting. Obviously, when we talk about hardpoint, Search, Destroy, Control, London are 4-1. They're tied for the best record in that game mode right now. I think the Thieves are 3-2, so they're not far behind in that. London have also won 3 Gavutus, which is what the Thieves also like to see as well. This is a hard one, and I feel like I just sold myself on choosing the Ravens, but I'm going to go with the Thieves. I'm going to go with the Thieves on this one. 3-1 or 3-2. I think this is going to be a down to the wire series. I said I can think of a million reasons why to go for the Ravens. I can think of a million reasons to go for the Thieves, just because I think that this team is so well experienced. I'm excited to see the London Royal Ravens in a high pressure game with, obviously this is going to be the biggest game of Afro's career. This is going to be the biggest game of Gizmo and Nasty's career. Zero's going to have to be, obviously organizing this team. They've got a lot of chemistry on their side. So, you like this team in an environment like this. And I'd love to go with the EU boys, but I'm going to go with the Thieves this time around. I think that London vend to play them on Berlin. I think that we do see a Gavutu control, and I think the Thieves do take advantage of it. As much as I talked about how that could be a great little, nod for the Ravens to be like, okay, yeah, we'll play that. You guys may not know that, but we're actually really good on the maps that you want to see in this series. I think that Thieves are top tier. And like I said, even though they had, I believe at times, an easier schedule, playing against 11 and 12 in overall seeding, the fact that they only lose to FaZe and they have a 4-1 record says a lot about this team. The fact they've been playing in California, they're going to have better ping, a lot of experience on this team, and a lot of motivation to really put up some great results. I'm going to go with the Thieves to take it. But I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing series. I'm super excited for that. Okay, we will jump into elimination round 2. We are approaching hour number 1, which means that I deserve a small break. All right, break is over. Florida versus Seattle, the Battle of the Seas, a rematch from one of the more shocking series that we had actually throughout the Major 1 qualifiers when the Mutineers came out and 3-0 smacked the Seattle Surge, which was very odd. We saw that reset obviously happen on the Bocage hardpoint. Vivid gets disconnected, he gets brought back, and the Mutineers roll from that point on. I mean, it was without a doubt one of the better series that we've seen. And the fact that it was the Mutineers beating the Surge was very impressive. As much as I would love to choose the Mutineers again, and I know I said it in this series versus Boston, as much as I would love to choose the Mutineers to be able to do it again, it would be so Florida of them to have a few weeks later the same team and to get 3-1 in the opposite direction. I hope that the Mutineers prove me wrong. I really do. I really like the Mutineers. I love the way that team is composed. I'm a huge Dave Patty fan. I think the way that he looked in that Toronto series, despite them losing 3-0, I mean, he looked excellent. It already shows that the Mutineers have got some great talent. My issue with Florida historically has been inconsistency. And as we said, 3-1 wins or 3-1 losses. It's one of the two. I think they had the least amount of game 5s last season, And their 5 matchups that they had, I think 3 of them were 3-0s, either in their favor or against them. One was a 3-1, and they went to 1 game 5. It just appears to be that they either get swept or they are sweeping. And I don't like the chances of that happening versus Surge. I just don't. I mean, I think that we'll have some very close maps, but I think Seattle win the opening hardpoint. As we talked about earlier, that is massive for Florida's confidence. I think Seattle have a good chance of taking that. Depending on what the Search Destroy is, I mean, if you're Florida, maybe you get a Berlin, you look great on attack. Nobody really wants to play you on Berlin, but maybe the Seattle Surge want to. I think it's 3-1 for Seattle. I don't know. It's such a weird thing. Like, to me, in Pick'ems last year, the Mutineers were the hardest team to predict without a doubt. You just had no idea how they were going to play on the day, and I just feel like it's going to happen again. I don't know. Just the way that I'm thinking about it. We'll go and move on. Minnesota versus Toronto, the battle of the North. We got the battle of the seas. We got the battle of the North. Such a great rivalry. One of my favorite rivalries throughout the entirety of the CDL. Both franchises do a great job at hyping up that one. And you know, honestly, in general, this is a huge game, right? This is a massive series for both of these teams. It obviously sucks for the Rocker because they have got 2 gauntlet games back to back in the elimination side. They got to face off against the Gorillas. Obviously, whoever loses the Thieves versus Toronto, you got to face off against that team as well. You know, because I think that both of those teams will beat the New York Subliners. So it's going to be a rough go of it for the Rocker once more. And as I said, it's a massive, you know, series for both of these teams. Both rosters do not want to, you know, get placed what is like top 10, top 8, or whatever it'll be at that point. You know, that would not look good on the resume by any means. Minnesota like the big respawns. They like the Gavutu controls. They like the Gavutu and the Berlin hardpoints. Toronto on the opposite side. They don't like the Gavutus. They do not. I mean, they obviously like the Berlins, but they don't like the Gavutus. So there's a good chance we could see some Bocage. We'll probably see a lot of Tuscan as well. And this is probably going to be one of the more surprising results. Maybe, I don't know for sure what everybody else has for this one. But I'm actually going to go Rocker here. I don't know. I thought about it for a long time. Again, it's another series where I could see this one going either way. I think a lot of people are going to have Toronto beating Minnesota in this position. But I just think that Minnesota, as we said, they've had a lot of difficult matchups. This to me is a team that almost similarly to the Gorillas, not exactly, but almost have that power to upset you because of their strength in Search and Destroy. I think if the Ultra cannot rely on the ARs, if they are getting bigger maps, right, versus a Rocker team who I think will want to play the bigger maps, that could not spell well for Toronto. Toronto's a very disciplined team. The same thing could be said a majority of the time for Rocker. Like I said, I think you like the Rocker and the Search Destroys, given that Toronto have not looked good in the Search Destroys as of lately. If Rocker can take a hard point or maybe win a control somehow, they'll be in a good position because, as I said, it is just not a healthy Toronto team right now based on the way that they looked last season. Again, this could be a totally different matchup that we have right here. It could be LAG versus the Thieves for all we know, which would be a fun matchup as well. It'd be the Battle of LA. But I think that we will have the Battle of the North. And I think that Rocker take it. I do. I don't know. It's just, I like Toronto a lot. They're one of my favorite teams in the CDL. It's just the fact that this team, you're going to tell me that this team, given the way that they have looked, totally opposite from the way that they looked last season, and they're going to come out and with a totally different strategy of now being a respawn team who relies on the SMGs. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that they flipped their entire game plan on and are still the same type of roster. I don't think it happens, and I don't think it's enough to get them past this Minnesota team, who either takes it in a 3-1 or 3-2. I think it'll be a 3-1, but I don't know. It could go to a game 5. I really have no idea. We're going to move on. Right, so Minnesota takes down Toronto. Let's jump to London versus Seattle. Another rematch from the Major 1 qualifiers. Everybody was super hyped up about that series, and the Ravens looked excellent. The Ravens came out. They won that series in a 3-1. As I said, they dominated the last hard point that we saw in that series. I think just in general, right, London are off of a loss versus the Thieves. Surge are off of a win versus Florida. How much do you take in regards to this win? I have no clue. Obviously, you take a lot off of this series, depending on who ends up being here for obvious reasons. I like London more in the hard points. I think the Search Destroys can be close, but I like London more in the controls as well. I give the edge to London. I do. I think for the same reason for how they looked at the Major 1 qualifiers versus the Surge. I thought that was going to be a great matchup, a good opportunity for Seattle. This London team is crafty. This London team is so crafty, and it could be expected, right? Okay, you have them losing versus the Thieves. Well, maybe they get knocked out versus the Surge. Like I said, I have Thieves being an elite level team. I have FaZe being an elite level team. I think London are just on the cusp of being right there. I don't know. Like I said, with the resume that Seattle have, it's not unbelievably impressive. I have them beating Paris. I have them beating Florida. To me, London are on a different level than these two teams, and that is the way that I'm looking at this. I think they get past the Surge once more. I don't know if it'll be a 3-1. To me, it's just kind of a placeholder. It's one of those games where it's just like, I honestly have no idea what the result's going to be. I just kind of go with London, and I'm going with the standard 3-1 pick. Let's move on. Optic Texas versus Minnesota. Optic off of a loss versus FaZe. They dropped that one 3-1. Minnesota trying to pull off an impressive losers bracket run. They beat the Gorillas. They beat Toronto, which is scary. And now they've got Optic Texas to worry about. I think this was a pretty good matchup last year. Maybe I'm wrong. Yes, it was. It was a great matchup last year. We saw these teams constantly battle. Everybody will remember the accuracy play on Moscow Search Destroy. I won't make you relive that. I won't play the clip or anything, but we all remember that. So these teams very familiar with each other. These organizations, I should say, very familiar with each other. And this is going to be a wild matchup, right? Not just because of the series that they had last year, but because of the Game 5 Round 11 that we saw happen at the qualifiers. The fact that Rocker was able to take a very close Game 4 Berlin hardpoint where they had no right to take it, and then they won in Round 11 in the Search Destroy. Like I said, last time around, Optic lost both the Search Destroys, and Minnesota managed to take a Berlin hardpoint. I don't know. I mean, given the way that this one looks, I feel like a lot of people are obviously going to choose Optic Texas, and I will too. I'm going to go with Optic to win this, but I think that Rocker are going to give it their best effort. I think that we see a very strong Minnesota team who, as we said, are going to go through the gauntlet again. I mean, they have not had a real easy matchup at all so far throughout Vanguard. I think it's going to continue to be the case. I think that they make a great run. I mean, beating LAG, beating Toronto, and falling to Optic is still a very solid run if you are the Rocker, despite what could be maybe an average placement based off of a lot of people's opinions. I think that Optic take it, but I think it goes the distance. I do. I think it goes the distance. I think Rocker give it their best shot. I think that they look great in this series, but Texas overall just look a little bit stronger. 3-1, 3-2. I give Optic the edge, and they get past the one team, right, that made them go to a Game 5 Round 11, and I love this story. Not intended at all, but imagine if Optic, right, they face off against Rocker, that goes to a Game 5 Round 11. Imagine if they get to do the same thing versus London, the other team they lost for in a Game 5 Round 11. Can they get the revenge not just once, but twice? It would be wild. I don't know. I think the crowd's going to be behind Optic. I mean, this is a huge series for London. Another high-stakes matchup where, again, the crowd is going to be against them. The chemistry is going to be tested. Optic fans are going to be going wild. I believe this is going to be on Sunday. Yeah, I think we have 4 games on Sunday. Is this one on Sunday? It is. So this will be one on Sunday. We've got 4 games going on Sunday, including the grand final. So this will be probably one of the first ones. The Ravens are going to have to be ready to go. Optic are going to be firing. They're going to be doing their best to obviously give the crowd what they want. So with this being a high-stakes matchup, I think normally I might give London the edge, but I'm going to go with Texas. I think 3-2, maybe 3-1 in favor of Optic. I think that they do pull off the revenge versus the two teams that they lost to at the stage 1, or rather at the major 1 qualifiers. I think they get the revenge, and I think a lot of it does come down to inexperience. This London team is still trying to figure things out. This London team obviously as a younger group. They're facing off against what is going to be one of the louder crowds that they have probably ever experienced. High stakes matchup. I think they do drop it, but we're still very impressed with the Ravens. We're still happy with what that team can do. Optic were just better in this series, and I think narrowly better. I have a lot of respect for this Ravens team. I think that they are very, very solid, but I think that Optic walk away with it. And these series, folks, are major ones. All of these on Sunday are double points. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 games of double points. If you can get the right teams at the very least in these 4, you're golden. Not just because obviously you predict the bracket right, but also because double points are everything. I'm going for Optic. What else do we got? We got the winners finals. We've got Atlanta taking on the LA Thieves. Atlanta did 3-1 the Thieves earlier in the Major 1 qualifiers. LAT was only able to take the Game 1 hardpoint, which was a wild Tuscan that I think was like a 2 or 3 point game. it's a tough ask for the Thieves, again, because at this moment, FaZe are undefeated. They're off of a great win versus Optic. Thieves are off of a equally great win versus the Ravens. Thieves are going to be tested, and I just think that this is going to be one of those matchups where Simp shows up and you see the ultimate way that FaZe can play. He's going to show up for this winners finals. I think he's going to show up for the entirety of the tournament. But I think that FaZe do walk away with this. I hesitate to go to 3-1 because I'm fully picking so many 3-1s. It's just difficult to go otherwise. But I think FaZe win at 3-0 or 3-1. I might actually go 3-0, even though that looks wild. And no, I'll go 3-1. I'm going to be respectful, even though that it looks like, you know, I'm going for a lot of 3-1s. It honestly is just because I think that those will go that way. I think the Thieves can take one of them. It's Atlanta. Like that to me is the ultimate description of this matchup. It's Atlanta FaZe. What do you want me to do? I think from the SMG line perspective, the fact that Celian looks like one of the best players in the world. We're talking about FaZe, who you don't want to see in Bocage. I mean, imagine if FaZe gets rid of Gavutu. Obviously, Thieves. Well, let me think in this situation. Would FaZe want to get rid of Gavutu? Because you obviously don't want to see Thieves in Berlin. FaZe may not care and just say, hey, let's play them whatever they want. I don't know. I mean, from a map view perspective, I think all the pressure's on the Thieves to get this right. The coin flip will be big because I would much rather see FaZe on Gavutu control than I would on Tuscan control. Thieves would rather play Tuscan. Thieves would rather play Gavutu than Tuscan. So the coin flip will be big. I don't know. I'm going to go for FaZe to take it. I think it's a 3-0 or 3-1. Yeah, I'm going to go 3-1. I think Thieves do make it somewhat close, but FaZe ultimately walk away with it. I'm going to say this is a close 3-1. A close 3-1 victory for FaZe. And so here we go. LA Thieves versus Optic, Texas. Nade versus Hex. Optic versus Thieves. This is going to be great. This is also, do I have this one earlier? No, I don't. I thought I had this one a little bit earlier, but I do not. Both of these teams, right? When it comes down to Optic and the LA Thieves, they live and die by the game one hard points. I mean, these teams are game one hard point type of rosters. Well, they want to come out and they want to shock you. I think Thieves can be crafty in Search Destroy. We know what Optic can do in Search Destroy. Optic has a better record in Control. Thieves are just behind them. Obviously, when it comes down to this matchup, all these results will be totally different. All of these win rates will be totally different. I don't know. I really don't. This to me is one of the hardest matchups to predict, given the trajectory of both of these lineups. I mean, to say that the Thieves have beat the Ravens, the fact they have a close, 3-1 loss versus FaZe. Optic are coming off of a great win versus Rocker. They're also coming off of another great win versus Ravens. I mean, where does Thieves rank on that? And these could be, I don't know how the schedule's going to look, but these will be obviously very close to each other. So you could say that could be an advantage for Optic to kind of catch the momentum. And that moment, I don't know. I thought about this one for a long time. I'll be honest with you. I thought about this series for a very long time. It's hard to know exactly where this one could go. It's hard to predict and assume because at this point, we'll have all kinds of different results. We'll have all kinds of numbers to go off of. But I am going to go with the Thieves. I'm going to go with the Thieves. I think that they do it again on LAN. They beat Optic Texas at the Kickoff Classic. I think they do it at the Major 1 qualifiers. I think it's a Game 5, Round 9, Round 10 type of game where it goes the distance, but Thieves are able to secure it. It's a wild matchup, but Optic just narrowly, I don't know why I did that. They just narrowly fall short, and we've got a rematch from those winners finals where it'll be the Atlanta FaZe versus the LA Thieves. I'm actually very happy with my bracket. I really am. I'm very happy with the way that my bracket's going because I could see all of this happening. I really could. I don't feel like I'm being super unrealistic with this. It's obviously a rematch from the winners finals. And I will say this because 9 times out of 10, everybody's going to say, oh, Atlanta FaZe easily. Considering the fact that they already beat them in the winners finals. When you have a rematch from the winners finals, the team that did lose and is coming from the loser side, it is so important for them to start off hot. If we see a 1-0, 2-0 start, no question, FaZe winning it 99 times out of 100. I mean, literally, it is that type of situation. The thing also, with FaZe being in this best of 9 format last season, they're prepared for this. Like I said, FaZe have been in best of 9s. This is the first time that the Thieves, as an organization in the CDL, have even sniffed a Sunday, let alone seen a best of 9 format. This is going to test the consistency that the Thieves have got. And obviously with some great wins, right? I mean, Thieves are going to have some great victories. They're going to have a win versus the Ultra. They're going to have wins versus the Ravens. They're going to have wins versus Optic. I mean, they have been tested and then some. They're going to be showing that consistency. But when it comes to a best of 9, it is a different beast. And it feels like when you're facing off against the Atlanta FaZe, they just have so many weapons at their disposal. As we said, the fact that Simp has not had a Simp-like season, and they are still 5-0. They're still the best Search Destroy team in the game. They are still one of the better hardpoint teams in the game. It's unbelievably impressive. The fact that they have the number 1 hardpoint, or rather they have the number 1 KD in every game mode, with Abizi being the one player who leads in hardpoint right now. It's terrifying. It feels like FaZe is like a fighter that just always has gas left in the tank. I mean, it just feels like they have always got something going for them. And it just feels like every time you face off against FaZe, you're not really favored in any game mode. I mean, I think that in terms of hard points, both these teams could go back and forth. Search Destroy, edge to FaZe. Control, edge to FaZe. Maybe Thieves have an answer here. I don't know. It's going to be a wild one. And with the small map pool, I mean, you're going to see everything really on display as well. Given that. So there's not going to be a lot of things that can't sneak their way through. Obviously, Thieves have their great maps. FaZe have their great maps as well. Obviously, if you're Thieves, you want to see them win the Berlin hardpoints. You want to see them win the Gavutu controls of the world, the Gavutu hardpoints of the world. You want to see them winning the big maps. But I just think in general, if they don't come out and look strong instantly, it is going to be a very tall task. And as we said, game 1 hardpoints, Thieves have been great at those so far. So there is a chance that they could win a game 1 hardpoint. But I'm going to go with Atlanta. I think Atlanta continued to express their dominance. I think they go, 1, 2, 3, 4-0 here at the tournament. I think they start off 9-0. Basically the exact same story to what we saw last season. History repeats itself. FaZe does the same thing. They lose at the Kickoff Classic. Everybody loses their minds, and then they go undefeated in the next 9 or 10 games. I think that's what we're going to see happen again. I got some wild situations going on here, though. I mean, a lot of weird moments, right, where we have, LAG getting knocked out early. New York aren't able to put it together. Seattle don't have an unbelievable tournament. They beat Paris. They beat Florida, but they don't beat the Ravens. Ravens make it decently far. Optic has a solid showing, but they're not beating Thieves or FaZe. What else do we got? I think one of the bigger stories, right, is Toronto not fully rebounding. Toronto get 1 win versus New York, but they lose versus Rocker. They lose versus Thieves. I mean, teams that fans would hope that they could take down, especially the Minnesota Rocker. I'm very happy with the bracket. I really am. I think that this is a very likely situation that we could see. But as we have crossed the hour, and I think we're coming up on an hour and 15 minutes, I want to say thank you for watching this. I really do. I appreciate you guys for watching this. You guys have been excellent, right? And watching LandO's lock-ins. It has been a blast doing these with you. It's going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun to see how the tournament shapes up, to see how the results go down. Feel free. I would love it if you guys tweeted me your brackets. I'd love it if you guys commented, on a few of these matchups. Commented. I read every comment. I read every tweet that you guys send me about LandO's lock-ins. Super excited to see you guys there. If you see me, don't hesitate to say hi. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the brackets, ways to make this better. I've taken feedback and I'm already working on trying to make this series better already. I've had some great suggestions in the comments, and I'd love to see those even more. So I really appreciate it, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and lock in the bracket just so you know that it's real. I'm saving the predictions, and we can't go back. We can't go back. The predictions are saved. You saw it happen here. I'm not changing a thing. I don't have the ability to change anything. This is what we're gonna be rocking with. So wish us luck. I wish you guys the best of luck as well. We'll see how everything goes, but I hope you guys do enjoy the Major 1 tournament, the Optic Texas Major. It's going to be a blast. Hope to see you there. If not, hope you guys have a great time watching online, and I will see you next week because we are jumping right into the Major 2 qualifiers once this tournament has ended. I will see you guys there for another video, another breakdown of our pick'em predictions. Hope you guys have a great day, have a great night, and enjoy the COD this weekend. I'll see you next time.